The restaurant smelled like mimosas and betrayal. Sunday brunch, 11:34 a.m., and my sister Victoria sat at the head of our family's table like she'd just solved world hunger. 8 family members, 2 of her medical practice partners, and a stack of glossy brochures showing architectural renderings of what she'd branded Lakeside Wellness Center. The lake house brings you $980,000 tomorrow, Victoria announced, tapping her champagne glass with a fork for attention. The buyers are bringing certified checks. Moving trucks are scheduled for Wednesday. This is finally happening. My private addiction recovery clinic on the most beautiful property in the county. Mom and Dad's retirement is secured, and we're providing a genuine community service. I sat 3 chairs down, coffee cooling in front of me, watching my sister pitch the sale of my federally funded research facility like it was her personal real estate asset. 26 years old, wearing jeans and a university hoodie that made Victoria's medical practice partners visibly dismiss me as the unsuccessful sibling. Behind the buyers, a husband and wife team with money from pharmaceutical sales, I could see Mom practically glowing with pride. Dad was already calculating his consulting fee from Victoria's future clinic operations. My phone buzzed. Unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Dr. Catherine Mills? This is Robert Zhao, Federal Title Verification Agent with the National Institutes of Health. We've been alerted to a pending property transfer for 2847 Lakeshore Drive. Our records show that property is held under Federal Research Grant Authority with significant use restrictions. Before any sale proceeds, I need to verify your authorization. I kept my voice low. I haven't authorized any sale, Mr. Zhao. That property houses an active neuroscience research lab funded by a 5-year NIH grant. Transfer would violate grant terms and require full repayment of federal funds. Professional silence. Then, the title search request came from Victoria Mills, MD, claiming seller authority as family representative. That's fraudulent representation on federal property. Should I contact the Office of Inspector General? Yes, please. And could you send documentation of the grant restrictions to my attorney? I think we'll need it momentarily. Forwarding now. Dr. Mills, I should mention. Attempting to sell federally funded research property triggers automatic fraud investigation. We're talking potential criminal charges and grant debarment. My sister has always been ambitious. I hung up. Refreshed my email. The documentation loaded. My $2.4 million NIH grant for traumatic brain injury research, specific property use requirements, federal interest in all improvements made with grant funds, and explicit prohibition on property transfer during the active grant period without NIH written approval and fund repayment. Restrictions Victoria had either ignored or never bothered to research. Time to end this fraudulent sale. I stood up at 11:41 a.m., walked to Victoria's end of the table. The medical practice partners looked at me with polite confusion, the younger sister in casual clothes interrupting the successful doctor's big announcement. Victoria's smile was pure condescension. Kathy, I didn't realize you were paying attention. I know neuroscience research isn't really your thing, but Mom and Dad thought you should be here for the big news. Neuroscience research is precisely my thing. I have a PhD in cognitive neuroscience from Stanford and a $2.4 million research grant from the National Institutes of Health. I pulled out my tablet, showed the grant documentation. The lake house you're attempting to sell? That's my federally funded research laboratory. Grant number NS 087432. Active funding through June 2027. The property cannot be sold, transferred, or repurposed without NIH approval and full repayment of federal funds. The table went silent. One of the pharmaceutical buyers was already pulling out his phone, presumably to verify what I'd just said. Victoria's smile froze. That's the lake house's family property. Grandma left it to all of us. Grandma left it to me. Sole beneficiary. Her will was very specific. I pulled up the probate documents. Catherine Mills, exclusive ownership, recorded April 2021. I converted the property to a research facility in 2022 using NIH grant funds. Installed specialized equipment, renovated for laboratory space, established it as my primary research site. Everything documented in my grant proposals and approved by federal oversight. The husband buyer was reading something on his phone. Jesus Christ. This property has federal liens. Research equipment valued at $680,000. Specialized construction funded by government grants. The title is completely encumbered. The title search should have caught this, his wife added, looking at Victoria with dawning suspicion. It did catch it. I showed them my phone, the call from Robert Chow. The federal title agent just contacted me. Victoria filed a sale request claiming family representative authority she doesn't have. That's fraudulent representation on federally funded property. Victoria had gone pale. Kathy, this is a misunderstanding. I thought. You thought what? That you could sell my NIH-funded research lab without my knowledge? That federal grant restrictions don't apply to you because you're a doctor. I pulled up my research documentation. I've been running traumatic brain injury studies at this facility for 2 years. I have $1.8 million in specialized imaging equipment. I have active research subjects. I have federal oversight inspections scheduled quarterly. This isn't family vacation property you can liquidate for your vanity clinic project. One of Victoria's medical partners, older woman, probably mid-50s, was looking distinctly uncomfortable. Victoria, you said this was unrestricted residential property you'd inherited. It is inherited property, Victoria tried. That I converted to federally funded research space with explicit grant terms prohibiting sale or transfer. I showed them the NIH grant agreement. Section 8, Paragraph 4. Property acquired or improved with federal funds remains subject to federal interest and use restrictions throughout the grant period and for 7 years following grant completion. Unauthorized transfer constitutes breach of grant terms and triggers immediate repayment obligation. The pharmaceutical buyers were already standing, gathering their materials. The husband looked furious. We've spent $40,000 on due diligence, architectural plans and feasibility studies based on your representations that this was available property. We can work this out, Victoria started. Work out federal grant fraud? His wife was already texting, presumably with their attorney. You represented government research property as your personal real estate asset. That's fraud. We're filing complaints with state medical boards and law enforcement. They left. Victoria's medical partners exchanged glances that communicated entire conversations about liability and professional association. Mom tried to salvage the situation. Catherine, sweetheart, surely we can discuss this as a family. There's nothing to discuss. Victoria attempted to sell my federally funded research property without authorization. She lied to buyers about property restrictions. She forged seller authority on title documents. I looked at my sister. This isn't family helping family. This is fraud targeting federal research assets. Dad used his reasonable voice. Kathy, you have to understand, Victoria's clinic would serve the community. Help people with addiction problems. Surely your research can continue somewhere else. My research is funded by a competitive federal grant that took 18 months to secure. The equipment is calibrated for this specific facility. Moving would cost approximately $900,000 and require new NIH approval. I pulled up my research publications. I'm studying traumatic brain injury recovery patterns. My work has been published in Nature Neuroscience and JAMA Neurology. This isn't casual hobby science you can displace for Victoria's private clinic ambitions. Victoria found her voice defensive now. Your research is just scanning people's brains. I'm planning to provide actual medical treatment. Addiction recovery. Real health care. My research develops diagnostic protocols that improve treatment outcomes for 50,000 traumatic brain injury patients annually. Your addiction clinic would serve maybe 200 wealthy clients who can afford private recovery services. I showed them my impact metrics. Federal funding priorities matter. NIH doesn't give $2.4 million grants for vanity projects. One of Victoria's partners cleared her throat. Victoria, did you know about the federal restrictions when you proposed this property? I thought we could get waivers, Victoria stammered. There are no waivers for active federal research grants. The NIH doesn't negotiate property transfers mid-project. I showed them the grant terms. The only way to sell this property is to terminate my research, return all unspent grant funds, reimburse federal investment in equipment and improvements, and go through 7-year use restriction review. Total cost, Approximately $2.1 million. Plus my research career would be destroyed and I'd likely be debarred from future federal funding. The table had gone very quiet. Victoria's medical partners were edging toward the door, professional people recognizing they'd been associated with something that could damage their own careers. Mom tried the guilt approach. But Kathy, this is your sister. Family means helping each other. Family doesn't mean destroying my federally funded research career so Victoria can open a luxury addiction clinic. I felt remarkably calm. 2 years of building my research program, months of watching Victoria's scheme develop through family conversations, it all led here. She knew about my NIH grant. She attended my grant celebration dinner. She's seen the research lab. She just decided federal restrictions didn't apply to her ambitions. Victoria's face cycled through anger, desperation, calculation. You're being selfish. This clinic would help hundreds of people. Then find different property. There are dozens of lakefront estates in this county. But you wanted mine specifically because it's the nicest location, and you assumed I'd just hand it over because you're the successful doctor and I'm just the younger sister doing brain research. I looked at her directly. You've spent 5 years dismissing my career. Telling relatives I'm still in school, when I have a PhD in federal research funding. Describing my work as Catherine's science hobby, while you're the real medical professional. And now you tried to sell my research facility like it was vacant family property you could liquidate. The remaining medical partner left. The table was down to just family now. Mom, Dad, Victoria, me and 2 cousins who looked extremely uncomfortable. My phone buzzed. Text from NIH Office of Inspector General. Received fraud referral. Need your statement regarding unauthorized property transfer attempt. Can you provide documentation? I replied confirming I'd send everything within the hour, then looked at Victoria. The NIH Inspector General wants my statement. They'll investigate the fraudulent sale attempt. Title fraud on federal property is a felony. You'd destroy my medical career. Victoria's voice cracked. I'd document fraud targeting federal research assets and let appropriate authorities handle prosecution. I pulled up my evidence folder. I have recordings of family dinners where you discussed getting Kathy to agree to sell. Emails where you told Mom and Dad you'd handle the property transfer, despite knowing about my grant. Text messages where you told your partners this was family property being repurposed for medical use, without mentioning federal restrictions. Dad dropped his head into his hands. Victoria, what were you thinking? I was thinking Kathy doesn't need a whole lakefront estate for her research. Victoria's control finally broke. She's 26 years old with government funding that pays her to scan brains all day. I'm a physician trying to build something meaningful. Something that actually helps patients. But no, federal bureaucracy and little sister's PhD mean I can't use family property for legitimate medical purposes. It's not family property. It's my property. My federally funded research facility. My career. I stood up, started gathering my things. And your addiction clinic isn't legitimate medical purposes. It's a luxury private practice targeting wealthy clients who can pay $50,000 for residential treatment. Don't pretend this is about community service. It's about building a profitable business using my research property. Mom tried once more. Catherine, please. Can't we find some compromise? No. The federal grant terms are non-negotiable. The property serves its designated research purpose through 2027. After that, I face 7 years of use restrictions before I could even consider selling. I looked at Victoria. By then you can buy your own property for your clinic. With your own money. Without committing federal fraud. I left the restaurant at 12:08 p.m. Behind me I could hear Victoria crying. Whether from genuine distress or calculated manipulation I couldn't tell anymore. 5 months later, the legal resolution was complete. Victoria faced medical board sanctions for attempting to profit from fraudulent property transfer. 1 year supervised practice, mandatory ethics training, $85,000 fine, and permanent record that would follow her license forever. The pharmaceutical buyers sued for fraudulent inducement. That case settled for $40,000. Victoria liquidated savings accounts to pay them back. Mom and Dad weren't sanctioned. They'd been participants but hadn't directly forged title documents. However, their relationship with Victoria was permanently damaged. Apparently she blamed them for not stopping Catherine from reporting the fraud. My research continued. The NIH grant was in excellent standing. I published 3 papers based on lake house facility research. 2 landed in major journals. My work on traumatic brain injury recovery patterns was being adopted by trauma centers nationally. The lake house remained exactly what it had become, a cutting-edge neuroscience research laboratory serving federal priorities. Protected by grant terms that made Victoria's fraudulent sale legally impossible from the start. I never responded to family contact attempts. Victoria sent emails alternating between apologetic and accusatory. Mom left voicemails about family healing. Dad tried showing up at my university office until campus security escorted him out. I blocked them all. Some relationships can't survive attempted destruction of your federally funded research career. A colleague asked me once about guilt. Your sister's medical career was damaged because you reported the fraud. My sister's medical career was damaged because she committed fraud attempting to sell federal research property. I just documented her crime instead of being complicit. I looked at him directly. She tried to liquidate my NIH-funded laboratory for her private clinic. That's not family asking for help. That's a physician targeting protected federal assets. On quiet mornings now, I work in my lake house laboratory. Specialized imaging equipment. Research subjects recovering from traumatic brain injuries. Data that improves treatment protocols nationally. The facility Victoria tried to sell for $980,000 to fund her luxury addiction clinic. The property that couldn't legally be sold anyway. Federal grant restrictions made the whole scheme impossible from the start. The moving trucks never came. The closing never happened. The wellness center was never built. And the title agent found my grant authority. With every restriction, every federal interest, every protection that made Victoria's fraudulent sale a crime rather than a transaction. She'd listed my lake house like it was family real estate she could repurpose. But the federal government had other ideas about property acquired with $2.4 million in NIH research funding. The title got flagged as restricted federal property. And Victoria's entire scheme collapsed during a Sunday brunch where she thought she was celebrating success. The lake house is still mine. Still federally funded. Still serving its designated research purpose. And that's worth more than any private clinic could justify destroying.